Zach, appreciate your time this morning. I know there's been a lot of flurry of news concerning this Arkansas football program in the last 24 hours. You guys were the first to break the story that Jermiah Ashley is going to be the new defensive line coach. For our listeners, for all the Arkansas fans that are tuning into the program, what is he going to bring to Barry Odom's defense at Arkansas?
They spoke really, really highly of him at Tulsa. Obviously, he was 6 years on Philip Montgomery's staff. A very good teacher, a very good man. Was a standout player at the junior college level and in the Big 12. He has some ties to Texas. Worked in the JUCO ranks coming up as a coach. So I think it was a very good hire for Arkansas.
Zach, when you look at the guy that's heading out the door, we have an insider that joins us every day, Clay Henry, and he told us that he was terminated in late December, and I know that you guys reported on early January that he potentially is maybe move on to the NFL. Any idea where Coach LeBlanc could end up his next coaching opportunity?
I really don't at this time. Obviously we reported that he was looking for an NFL job. Last I checked, that had not happened. So right now, it looks like he just might just be out. But hopefully for his sake, he can get an NFL job or another job. But I know that he's been looking for one for a while and has not found one.
Zach, when you look at the overall picture of what's gone on since the conclusion of the season, with Arkansas having 4 staff changes, what are your thoughts as Sam Pittman? After year one, some of these moves apparently or appears to be ones to kind of help Barry Odom get the staff to where he wants to be, particularly with Michael Scherer coming on as linebackers coach. What's your overall thought with 4 changes for a first-time head coach in Sam Pittman?
My biggest thought is the biggest change that Arkansas made was one they didn't have to make it in keeping Barry Odom. If on a certain level, obviously you'd love to keep your staff together, but at the same time, if people are coming after your people, then it means you hired the right people. And obviously Barry Odom had conversations, opportunities to leave. So getting to keep him for another year is the by far the most important piece of the puzzle for Pittman's staff. So the changes below that are obviously important, but getting to keep him, I think, was the biggest development for Arkansas this season.
We've had a few calls and texts this morning during the show with maybe some concern about the youth movement that seems to be on this staff, the lack of Power 5 coaching experience. What would you say to those listeners or to those fans that are watching and seeing a staff evolve into a younger staff but maybe less Power 5 experience? You see all of these changes across the country. This is your job. This is what you follow. How concerned or maybe lack of concern should these fans have looking at these changes as a whole?
Well, college football is coaching is a young man's game. So the changes that are coming to the job in regards to the transfer portal, the name, image, and likeness, new rules, frankly, it has a lot of coaches spooked, and a lot of older, more experienced coaches that have options to go to the NFL are pursuing them with more vigor than they have in years past. Obviously, the lifestyle of an NFL coach, assistant coach, is better than one of a college coach. So I think the staffs across the country are getting younger, and I think they're going to keep getting younger. Just because you got to be hungry, you got to really want to do this job to put in the hours that it requires. So I don't think that's necessarily a concern. I mean, we've seen a lot of staff with a whole lot of SEC experience just kind of spin their wheels. So the lack of it, obviously you want some, but to have guys that are young and hungry and eager to prove themselves could be a huge advantage.
Talking with Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com here on the Morning Rush. Let's step outside of Arkansas for a second. I know this hire was made a couple days prior, but Josh Heupel, Zach, there's a lot that's been made about the former Oklahoma quarterback, former UCF coach heading to Knoxville, and it seemed like that Danny White just kind of was left with Josh Heupel. What did you make of the hire, and do you think Tennessee made the right decision with its football program moving forward?
Yeah, Danny he had trouble kind of explaining the hire, other than the obvious of this is the best guy I could get, when he said that he hired the best coach he could, but at the same time he didn't want to hire Josh Heupel. He hired his number one coach, but at the same time he didn't have a list or a ranking. And look, obviously the Tennessee job is at rock bottom at this point, considering the state of the roster, the NCAA sanctions that may or may not be coming. So if I'm anyone else in the SEC, I'm not losing any sleep. A chill is not going down my spine to see Josh Heupel enter the conference. Obviously, his success on the offensive side of the ball at Mizzou, at UCF, there's no denying that the guy knows how to put together a really good offense. And that's been sorely needed at Tennessee. If he can get that, I mean, it seems like their quarterback position has been really bad since Peyton Manning, practically. Mm-hmm. So if he can fix the quarterback, then that's going to go a long way to fix the offense. But I think it's fair to question his ability to lead a program, considering UCF got they were kind of on the Larry Coker trajectory when he took over at Miami. Really good to just pretty good to just okay over 3 years. So it's going to take some time. The weird thing is, if you're Tennessee and you're 3 years in, and you say hypothetically you go 5-7 every year, well, at that point you need to keep you need to keep digging with Josh Heupel, just because that program needs stability more than anything else.
Zach, let's talk about their rival, the Alabama Crimson Tide, and I say that term loosely because they hadn't won a game against Alabama since 2006. We always do this every offseason. Nick Saban loses a ton of assistant coaches. He loses a ton of players. So you think about Mac Jones, Jalen Waddle, Surtain, Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner. You lose Steve Sarkisian to Texas. He's brought over assistants. We do this every single year, though, but I have to ask this regardless. Any chance that there's a little bit of a drop-off with Alabama this next season based on the staff they've lost and based on the talent that they've lost in Tuscaloosa?
I do expect a drop-off just because they could bring back their entire staff, and it'd be hard to put together an offense that has Devontae Smith and Najee Harris and all those guys. But at the same time, you're looking at a team that won the national championship game by 28 points. So if they're 10 links ahead of the rest of the college football, and now they're only 3 links ahead, well, you're still talking about arguably the best team in the country. So I don't love the Bill O'Brien hire. I'm just not a gigantic fan of that guy. So we'll see what he cooks up on offense. But at the same time, Nick Saban knows a hell of a lot more than me on in terms of hiring coaches. I mean, you look at the program, and a guy like Kamar Wheaton is a 5-star running back out of the Alabama area, committed to Alabama for a long time, did not sign in December. They lose their offensive coordinator, they lose his area recruiter, they lose the running backs coach. So basically anybody that he knew at Alabama other than Nick Saban is now gone, but he's still going to sign with them just because it's Alabama, it's Nick Saban. So they're going to remain the elite of the elite until we say otherwise. And I certainly I can raise my hand and say, they lose Lane Kiffin. They lose Kirby Smart. They lose this number one draft pick, this number one draft pick. This is the time they fall off. And I'm not going to be Lucy with the football this time. They're going to be good as long as Nick Saban's there.
Zach, what's been your level of surprise, or have you been surprised at the number of changes in college football this year, with all the financial uncertainty, the lack of ticket sales this year, just uneasiness with ADs and administration about the financial future over the next 12 to 24 months? Have you been surprised at the number of changes initiated by these institutions in this offseason?
Yeah, if you'd asked me back in April, I'd said we wouldn't have had a single change. Maybe somebody would have retired, and that would be the only changes. But once we got to the season and seen the dynamics of the season, it didn't surprise me. Just because, I mean, you look at what Ray Tanner said after South Carolina fired Will Muschamp, and that's, we think that we're going to be able to have 82,000 at our games in 2021, and so therefore $13 million to buy out a failing head coach is not that big a deal. And the 80s were able to do the math of sunk cost versus opportunity cost versus, what are we going to lose if we only sell 60,000 tickets next year? And obviously we know the SEC just signed a big deal with ESPN for the game of the week. So the finances are fine in the SEC, and it's as a top-down business, then their changes trickle down to the rest of college football. So it's still a little light in terms of overall numbers. I think maybe at the group of five level we didn't see as many changes as we otherwise would have. I think we're only at 15, which is one of the lowest over the last decade. But in terms of quality of jobs, it's been a normal year.
For these programs that have made transitions, you mentioned South Carolina, one of the first, Auburn, another program that let go of Gus Malzahn's brought Brian Harsin in. If stadiums aren't full this fall, if fans only come back in 50 or two-thirds capacity and don't buy the tickets, what kind of challenges do you think that creates on the immediate horizon for these ADs?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to be a bigger challenge for the golf team and the swimming and diving program than it will be for the football team. And that's certainly not fair, but that's just the reality of the situation. We saw, when teams started getting cut, it wasn't, it certainly wasn't the football team. And so certainly, you hate any time someone loses an opportunity, loses a job, but football pays the bills, so football is going to be the last one cut. But so I think any other pain that's felt, hopefully we're through all that. But any sort of consequences are going to be laid upon the non-revenue sports.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com, kind enough to make some time for us this morning. Zach, we really appreciate it, man. And I'm sure you'll be doing a lot more work as this offseason continues, not just in the SEC, but as college football as a whole.
Hey, thank y'all for having me.